Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm learning a lot about what to build on top of blockchains. But right now, I'm going to talk about the foundation of blockchain, okay? And a new approach that I developed maybe 3 years ago. I started developing, which is a new foundational blockchain, actually developed from first principles. And the reason is that at some point, I asked, okay, finally tell me about Bitcoin, right? And people started giving an explanation. It seemed to me that was a bit too complicated. And ever since I decided that maybe I should try to simplify. And sometimes, if you want to simplify things, you have only one way, to start from scratch, which is what I did. All right, so this new approach is actually based on a 30 years old concept, which is called the Byzantine Agreement, which is a way to get into agreement with people who have a totally different view of the world, and say up to a bunch of them, a large fraction of them is malicious. All right, so let me tell you a bit about Bitcoin. Everybody knows that it's based on proof of work. And the main assumption here that there is the honest majority, the majority of the mining equipment is in mining power is in honest hands. And so I was not trying to develop anything new unless there were some problems. So let me tell you the problems that I see, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who sees these problems. So the first problem is that of wastefulness, right? Of any resource inside. Electricity, cost, fees. And by the way, if you really don't, right now, with whatever modest use of Bitcoin transaction that we have, the cost of inserting, the electricity cost of inserting a transaction on a block is, give and take, is $20 just to write an entry in the block. Now, these blocks are subsidized by inflation, but that's a different story. So that is a very high cost thing. And of course, you know, these costs are borne ultimately by us, the customers. Then another problem that I saw with Bitcoin is that there is a concentration of power, okay? Power in the hands of these miners and the mining pools. So somehow in Bitcoin, who control the blockchain is indeed 3 mining pools. And in Ethereum is actually 2. So are we going to say that 2 is decentralized and 1 is centralized? I mean, I'm in favor of decentralization, but it has to be a true decentralization. So on top of this concentration of power, which is already problematic, actually is concentrating in the power of somebody, namely the miners, who have nothing to do with the money on the ledger, on the blockchain. Right? So there is really an orthogonal force to money, right? And moreover, there is actually a lot of vulnerability there, right? Because these miners actually, everybody knows where they are. Let's put it this way. The electrical companies of the countries where they operate know very well where they are because they suck so much juice from the network. And by the way, they always go belly up. They're actually kind of poor, believe it or not. Why are not very rich? Because they consume tons of electricity and even subsidize, they have to pay for it. So very often I have a beautiful business plan. I borrowed $10 million to buy more equipment, more mining rewards. Look how much money I'm going to make. Somebody else has the same bright idea. Now the puzzle becomes harder, and they actually were not able to return the money, and they go bankrupt. And so if you put that concentration of power in very few hands, and actually very few hands are not doing very well either, you have really a recipe for a disaster. Very easy to corrupt free miners, to corrupt, you know, somehow a tenth of us, right? Way, way easier. So if you really want to do the blockchain, to do, say, think of it like an auction, and the auction lasts for a day, what a great idea to do an auction on a blockchain, because rather than selling your item to a few folks local, you just go worldwide. Anybody can participate, etc., etc. Except that if you bribe a few people, say, hey, don't put the bids of those guys on the blockchain, you're going to win, and you're going to do, you fetch a very low price. So if you are a seller in these things, you know, I might prefer to go to old Goldman Sachs, despite the prices that they want for the help they give me, than to go into some place where, if you corrupt two miners, I'm done for. So then there is an issue of scalability. As you know, Bitcoin, it doesn't quite scale. So somehow there is a block every 10 minutes, put another way, 7 transactions per second. Really, that is not enough for our needs, right? We are avid consumers of transactions. And so if then the people transacting, they go from 10 million to 100 million to a billion, what is going to happen to this? Another problem inside of scalability is the one of ambiguity, also known as on-chain forks. So anytime, right, that you see a fork, you end up, oh my God, am I going to be paid? Because on which side of the chain, of the fork, is the payment due to you, right? And so that is a problem because of these dead branches, they get cut and disappear eventually, and your payment with it. So what you do, actually, you say, well, I don't ship you the goods just because your payment has appeared in the blockchain. I want the block where it is to be 3 deep, maybe 6 deeps, maybe 12 deeps. So from 10 minutes, you go to half an hour, 2 hours, and so on and so forth. So just not ideal if you want to buy, pay for a meal at a restaurant. You and the waiter are going to have a lot of conversation to do before the block gets really embedded. All right, and then there is also a question of securities. And by the way, I must say, as a cryptographer, we think about the wars, and sometimes, but the wars happen. Okay, so it is, cryptographers are a bit realistic in the long run. So when we talk about the security of a blockchain, we think about protocol attacks. So we envisage an adversary who is going not to send the message according to the protocol. But that is a kind of a gentleman adversary. A true fangled adversary is going to attack not only the protocol, but the very communication network on which the protocol is run. It could, for instance, isolate Europe from the other 4 continents. And if you do that, it's a bit expensive to do, but a successful blockchain is going to have, trillions of dollars of assets managed by the blockchain. Then it may not look so expensive anymore. And so if you consider a network attack, security is iffy. All right, so let me tell you about Algorand. It is based on a Byzantine agreement, as I said, and the assumption is that Algorand works if the majority of the money in the system is in honest hands. It's a very different assumption. By the way, I prefer this assumption to the previous one. Why? Because money is fungible. And for instance, should the majority of the money be in dishonest hands? Oh, never mind. You can buy anything you want with money, including mining equipment, and therefore you have it, the majority of the mining equipment is in dishonest hands, right? Oops.
Does majority in this case mean 51%?
Oh, it could be 51, but if you want security against a network attack too, it has to be 2/3. And that is tight. That has nothing to do with me. There is no other blockchain that can do it better than that. Okay, so let me tell you the main technical advantage. First of all, trivial computation, okay? So there is no electricity to worry about because you have to do a few additions, comparisons on integers, digitally sign a message, verify digital signature. That's it. That's good. Actually, there is also true decentralization. So there is a single class of users. No miners, no nothing. So it's only us. We are going to settle our questions among us without the interventions of any other party. Then there is a finality of payments, okay? What does this mean? That once a block appears on the blockchain, it's going to stay there forever. There is no forks. Actually, that's a little bit of a lie. There may be forks, but with very low probability. The probability 10 to the minus 18. That is a strange constant. I made it up. Let me tell you why I chose this constant. 10 to the power 18 happens to be the number of seconds from the Big Bang till now. So another way to say it, you have to wait for the age of the universe to see a fork in Algorand. And at this scale, maybe we can afford to see one. And scalability is actually perfect scalability. Let me explain. In a distributed system, the block has to go around so that everybody, or 95% of the world, sees it. Right? Otherwise, how do we know? We know what the last block was. But we can produce a block as soon as we can circulate it through the network. There is no further delay. There is no reason to wait another 10 minutes. Okay? A block, even over the internet with mom and pop modems, it can go around the globe twice in a few seconds. That is not the problem. But in Bitcoin, you have to space it of 10 minutes so to avoid forks. If you make the crypto puzzle to be shorter so that you can have one block every minute, suddenly the forks become so big that you're going to have a big spaghetti mess in which it is even hard to figure out where is the longest chain. I mean, you don't see anything anymore. Yes, later it's going to become a little bit clearer. All right, and then finally security against a bad adversary. How bad? Very bad. Okay. However, worry not, because we are here to defend you, right? That's the thing. So, define bad, that's an adversary who can actually corrupt anybody he wants, provided that he can not corrupt more than a third of the internet, which is very hard thing to do, and totally controls whoever he corrupts, and can attack the protocol and can attack the network. The only thing he cannot do is to forge a digital signature, which, by the way, not even a nation state could do. So, do we need to be so adversarial? Absolutely. If you are successful as a blockchain, there is a lot of value in the world, and if you take even a small fraction of it, and so these adversaries are going to pop up as mushrooms after the rain, right? So they're going to do everything. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit how things look like in Algorand. This is Algorand in action. Behold the Genesis block, so-called, the block number 1. By the way, the block number 1 is the only one which we know for certainty. Because whenever we specify the system, whatever system it is, we say, this is the first block and these are the rule. Okay, the real question is, how do you generate the block? What is the next block and the one after that, and so on and so forth. So on the right of the block, you see a favor, a universal symbol of lightness and effortlessness. And as this favor gently falls down, all the blockchains unfolds. Okay? So you can say, wait a minute. That is a very easy case. How about forks? How about proof of work? But remember what I said. In Algorand, there are no forks and there are no proof of work. What you have is really a blockchain as it was meant to be. One block after the other, and every block that appears and never disappears. Yeah.
What is this, a Merkle tree, or is this an efficient?
No, not my God. This is a tree. This is a sequence of blocks. It's a line of blocks. It's a chain. Pardon? Oh no, they are chained by hashing as usual. The hash of the previous block is part of the next block. That's easy. The difficulty, all blockchains have that, right? So that one is included in the other by hashing. That's easy. What the problem is, where blockchains differ from one another, what is the process to generate the next block, given the fixed blocks? That, right? And in the process is, whoever solves this crypto puzzle first in Bitcoin. That's why I tried to solve it to get my mining reward. You tried to solve it. Everybody trying to solve it. Lots and lots of people try to solve. I waste electricity. So do you. We hit the planet, and 10 minutes solves it. Right? We are going to do something different. All right. So what are we based on? So Algorand is not based on proof of work. On what is it based? Well, it is based on pure proof of stake. What is it? What the hell is a pure proof of stake? Well, let me tell you what it is not. So it is not delegated proof of stake, just to avoid confusion. That is most of proof of stake that people have heard about, I'm familiar with, right? Delegated proof of stake means, I have these 20 good folks who are in charge of selecting the next block for this month. And don't worry, next month, different good, honest 20 people. I have a problem with that because 20 people looks to me very centralized anyway. And even if we are lucky to have selected trustworthy people to put in charge of selecting the next block, a bad adversary, what can it do? It can take them off by a denial of service attack. Basically by sending all kind of random garbage to all of them, and these guys cannot even see the transaction that they have to transform into blocks. So essentially, you stop the blockchain. That is a no-no. If a blockchain has value, a denial of service attack against anybody costs $5 for 5 minutes. Oh, but this is 20 people. Never mind, $100 for 5 minutes, and you stop progress? You stop all payments in the worldwide? No. All right, bonded proof of stake is something you may have heard about it. Well, it's different from delegated. What is it? Is that, we don't put in charge 20 people. It can be 20, can be 200, can be 2,000. Anybody who wants to push in the middle of the table their money, they have the right collectively to generate the new block, and their influence in generating the new block is proportional to the amount of money they push in the middle of the table. Now, if you look at that, that seems to be better than the previous one. But is it? Let me ask a fundamental question, okay? Or take a typical user. What fraction of his or her disposable income can the user afford to put in the middle of the table when he's not going to touch? Maybe very small. So in a system like this, what we are actually doing, we are rolling a red carpet, enabling big thieves with deep pockets to put a disproportionate amount of money in the middle of the table for the sole purpose of controlling the blockchain. Now you may say, oh, by the way, if they misbehave, we confiscate their money. Don't buy that. Because very few actions you can recognize to be malicious and trigger a confiscation of money. You know what the typical action may be, the one I was discussing before? Say, why didn't you put, Brian's transaction here? So I didn't see it. What are you going to do if I say I claim that I didn't see a transaction? Nothing. There is no money to confiscate. And by the way, even if you confiscate the money, if I can make $1 billion by doing something else and I lose $1 million that I post in the middle of the table, that's the cost of doing business for a thief, okay? So all these things are essentially hidden forms of centralization. I really believe that the blockchain to really deliver the trust that allows us across continents, across different cultures and nations to trade with one another, they cannot be centralized, and these systems, in my opinion, are centralized. So finally, what is instead pure proof of stake? First of all, nobody confiscates any money. There are no punishments in Algorand. Why? Because we believe that it is better to architect a system in which cheating is impossible than to catch, if you can, and punish cheaters afterwards. And the money that we talk about is always at your fingertips, as it should be, ready to be spent. It's not money that you segregated in some escrow far away from you. By the virtue of having money, you make the holding money in honest hands, you make the blockchain strong and secure. So, whose money? Everybody, not some special of us. And a part of our money? No, all our money, always ready to be spent, by magic is at work to secure the chain. That is pure proof of stake. All right, so how does it work? So at a very high level, Algorand works in two magic phases. Rest assured that magic is actually replaced by mathematics, but I found it a little bit easier to talk about magic than to talk about the mathematics, okay? So here is phase one. By magic, a random user is selected among all users in the system, proportionally to the amount of money that he or she has in the system. And what does this random user do? Selects the next block, right? Looks around for valid transaction that not yet entered the blockchain and proposes and propagates a block. End of magic phase one. Magic phase two.
So phase one is the genesis block.
No. So this one is that, let's assume that we are, the blockchain so far contains 150 blocks, okay? So somehow we have to generate the next block, number 151, right? So, okay, how does the system work? Magic. You are selected, okay? And it's your job for this block, next time it's going to be somebody else's turn, to to actually propose a block. You say, I've seen this transaction, they're all valid, you signed them, you propagate it around the block, around the world, right? By magic, everybody knows that your public key has been selected, so everybody listen. If I receive your block, I say, oh, that's the block that I should consider. That is the end of phase 1. Phase 2, now a committee of 1,000 people is randomly selected by magic again. Their public key are by magic immediately known to the entire network. And what do these people do? They reach agreement on the block proposed by the first user. Says, gee, why 2 steps? Because in any society, we must concede there are criminals, right? Yeah, but they are, 1%, maybe 2%. If you really live in a very dangerous society, 10%, maybe 20%. But, they're not going to be in majority. Because if the criminals are in majority, there is no society. So if the judges routinely incarcerate the innocents, if the police extorts money from you day in and day out, it's very little they can do. This is not a society. So let's assume we live in a dangerous society when there are 10% of the criminals. If I select a user at random, 1 in 10 times is going to be a criminal. And so what can this guy do? Can simply send a block to you, digitally signed, and a different block to me, digitally signed, and a digital block to her, digitally signed. So the fact that I receive a block signed by the person I know has been selected for this round to select the block, the next block, it doesn't tell me anything. But now this second phase, now we have selected 1,000 people. Totally different story. Because even if 10% of the people are malicious, if you select 1,000 of them, the probability that the majority of this randomly selected 1,000 is malicious is very, very small. Okay? Absolutely minuscule. And that is a little bit the answer to the question that I was given before. Yes, yes, yes?
How is this different or similar to the way that Dfinity does their consensus?
Oh, Dfinity is a hybrid between a delegated proof of stake.
I didn't mean that part, I'm sorry. To be clear, I mean how they go about selecting who signs and who validates the transaction.
So Dfinity work. Yeah, but, I want to say, let's put it this way. So our is a bit more sophisticated. I will actually explain. So what do they do here? They have committees of 400 people each, and then they, by a coin toss, they decide which committee is going to be in charge of a block for a while. And then the coin toss says, okay, now it's committee number 3. Now it's committee number 7. Okay, so. But they are a static committee, okay? They stay put for a long time. If I'm an adversary, and if it's my job to destroy the system, I mount a denial of service attack against 400 people, no problem, okay? All right, so it's clear how it works. So 2 magic phases. Magic phase 1, a random user is selected. Magic phase 2, 1,000 users are selected, and they approve or disapprove, so to speak, for simplicity, the block proposed by the first person. All right. I have a few questions. In fact, you have a few questions. So let's see if I can somehow cut some of these questions. Otherwise, I will be done in 10 minutes. Maybe perhaps we can ask a bit later, if you don't mind. I will not forget you, okay? So, in fact, it's now time to take some rabbits out of a hat, because if we continue doing whatever we've been doing, we ended up in Bitcoin Prime, Bitcoin Double Prime, and so on and so forth. We have to do something strange. Okay, the first question, Q&A, many questions and many answers. I'm going to handle one. Which one? The one that I get asked the most. And the one I get asked the most is this one, which is a pretty good one. You have 1,000 people which are responsible for approving the block. Who selects these 1,000 people? That's a very good question. If there is we have 1 billion users, and I claim that Algorand scales, can you imagine a billion users arguing about which 1,000 people should be chosen? Well, we all die before we stop talking. And so the answer in Algorand is a bit counterintuitive. The committee of 1,000 people, they choose themselves. Says, what? If there is a bad idea, this is one, right? Because if I am a bad person and I can choose myself, I choose myself to approve this block and the next block and after that forever. Well, not so fast, because to be selected, I run an individual lottery in the privacy of my computer, and you do the same thing. And what this lottery is a cryptographic lottery, fair. Not even a nation state can actually manipulate the probability, increase or decrease the probability of being selected in this committee. And so, if there is 1 million people and say users and we want 1,000, the lottery, the probability of winning ought to be 1 in 1,000, because 1 million divided 1,000 is 1,000. If we have 1 billion users, the probability of winning the lottery is 1 billion divided 1 million, is 1 in 1 million, because 1 billion divided 1 million is 1,000, and so on and so forth, okay? So, and what happens is, so anytime that you see that a new block has been proposed, I start saying, am I one of the 1,000 people approving this block, yes or no? In a microsecond, I run my own individual lottery without talking to anybody, and you do the same. So in a microsecond altogether, we are done. Okay, very, very fast. And if I win the lottery, which is, I actually get a winning ticket. What do I mean by that? That is a proof that I won the lottery, that everybody can recognize. And what I propagate in the network is 2 things. A, my winning ticket, please listen to me because I've been selected by the fair lottery to speak. And by the way, here is my opinion about the block, up or down, right? Together. I want to clarify that, again, my probability of winning is proportional to the amount of money I have, right? Because otherwise, if I'm a cheater, I create, 1 million keys all belonging to me, and you are having Silvio 1, Silvio 2, Silvio 3, Silvio million, right? But instead, in Algorand, if I have $1 million in 1 key, or 1 million keys with $1 each, the probability of being selected is absolutely the same. Oh, give me a second. And by the way, let me argue that guarantees the ultimate speed that has in Algorand, as well as the ultimate security. Let me ask first, start for the ultimate speed, right? How long does it take to convene a committee of 1,000 people? Nothing. So each one of us does, separately, run this micro lottery, very, very secure and very, very fair, and we are done. In a microsecond, we have 1,000 people selected, with the notion that once you see the winning ticket, you know that they've been correctly selected. You don't argue. That is a random sample of 1,000 people. Why is this the ultimate security? Well, let's assume that I'm one of these bad adversaries that I described before, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to be scrutinizing every block to figure out who the hell of the people on Earth are in the committee, because I want to corrupt them, right? That's my job. However, I don't know who is going to be in the committee. Because remember, each one of you is running a lottery, and what do I know if you won? If the lottery is run in your own computer, how the hell I know if you won or not? So I don't know whom to corrupt. However, once you see that you won the lottery, you propagate a proof, a winning ticket that you won the lottery, and your opinion about the committee. Now I know who you are, and I corrupt you right away. But so what? Whatever you had to say, you already said, right? And I cannot take your winning ticket and your opinion of a block back into the bottle no more than the US government can put back into the bottle a message virally propagated by WikiLeaks. Right? So, beforehand, I don't know whom do I corrupt, and once I know, it's a bit too late because I've already spoken. Roughly, that is the idea. Trust that there is 1,001 questions, if not 1,500, and each one has the answer. So that is required to have a proof. By the way, if you go under the hood, there is a lot of technology to achieve this simplicity of design. And one is this VRFs and cryptographic sex selection that I just described. Another one is a super fast Byzantine agreement, which essentially you agree on the block while the block is propagating, so you don't waste any time at all, okay? And the other one, which I want to pick it in all capital, because I want to spend a little, 1 minute of the 5 minutes left to discuss, is this true self-governance. I believe in governance, but I believe in distributed power, so I believe in self-governance, okay? So self-governance, everybody wants self-governance. You say, oh, my system we do whatever the community wants to do. That's great, but how do you enforce that? What is the technical underpinning that lets you figure out what the community wants? Remember, in Algorand, there is propose and agree, propose and agree, propose and agree paradigm, right? And what do we agree on? 99.9% of the time on what the next block is. But we can agree on anything. We can agree on a change of rules. We can agree on a change of policy. We don't need to have split the community if we want to say, do we want a megabyte blocks or do you want a 2 megabyte blocks? Oh, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Classic. We don't, because we put it, a committee is fairly selected, weighted for money, and we know we can count their votes right away, put them on the blockchain themselves, and we can see for ourselves what the majority of us wants to do. In a system in which essentially you blog, and I blog, and she blog, and he blogs, and we all blog, who is going to win? Who blogs most? Who is most vociferous? Who writes everything in all capitals? I mean, this doesn't, you have no way to determine what is the power of so which portion of the community is behind a certain proposal. Here we do have. Why this is important? Because right now what people want is really truly distributed and scalable. But there is a saying in Italian, which I believe it translates quite well, and it goes roughly as follows: appetite grows while eating. What does this mean? So, do you want to eat? No, I'm not hungry. I'll sit down just for the company. So as soon as you sit down, you are hooked, okay? So we want scalability and centralization because these are the immediate problems. And then we are going to want X and Y and Z. And what do we do? Oh, sorry, this is a cryptocurrency, is an ocean liner on autopilot. I cannot give you X because I didn't think of it when I started. So now there is room for a new currency to come in, and then a third blockchain, and then a fourth blockchain. That's not the way it works. It should not work this way, right? Communities are formed by living beings, namely us, and they are alive entities themselves. So, and life is about evolution. So you want to have a protocol that allows to evolve, but not at the whims of some dictator or something like this. If you have a situation which you can poll, determine what the community wants to do and adopt it, you can actually evolve and improve the protocol with the blessing of the entire community. So you don't have to have a hard fork every time. And by the way, there are a few other properties, but I'd like to leave it here. And so let me tell you that we have often erected to the skies architectures of great beauties and lasting power. Behold the Julian Bridge, which was actually built in southern France in the year 3 BC. So this architecture has been in use uninterruptedly, and during medieval times, no repairs, okay? For 2020 years by now, right? And until 2005, people felt it was a good idea to have cars and trucks cross it, okay? Unbelievable. That is what, you know, an infrastructure, a true infrastructure is. So I believe that the blockchain's infrastructure will prove as useful to bridge and cement all of us together, and as beautiful as any physical infrastructure that we ever built. So let's build it, and let's build it right. Thank you. Yes, I promise you, yes, before.
In this model of proof of stake, is there an incentive for the people to actually validate transactions?
Yes, if you go back, oops, you see, secure incentive. So if I have to stop in this, I believe I can handle another question or two. Secure incentives are very hard to architect incentive. Just ask Wells Fargo, right? They want to say, if you get more accounts, I'll pay you, right? That's it. So to me, the miners in Bitcoin are an incentive gone wrong, an incentive scheme gone wrong. I don't believe that Mr. or Mrs. Nakamoto, or the Nakamotos, how many they are, they really wanted to have these mining pools, right? So who knew? They just want to incentivize a good behavior. But when people see money, they don't care about what behavior you want to incentivize. They want to maximize their money. And so if you are not right, the danger is that you are going to inadvertently create a totally different behavior. So what you need here is a proof. Yes, we can have incentives, but yes, to be mighty careful and to have a mathematical proof that these incentives are not to collide with what we really want to have, the desired behavior. Yes and yes and yes.
The question I had was about Magic Phase 2.
Oh, yes, yes.
So the question I had, you seem to be limited in terms of the number of transactions you can transact.
No, yeah.
Let me finish. Based on network latency, I'm trying to understand how network latency correlates with...
No, it's orthogonal. That is the beauty of it. Okay, first of all, I want to tell you 1,000, actually in this particular case, is an absolute constant, okay? Because 1,000, you really have, you can have 1 billion people on the planet, okay, we can keep on multiplying, so it could be 10 billion, 100 billion, I don't care. 1,000 is enough to make the probability of a dishonest majority minuscule, okay? So this number 1,000, if the block has 100 transactions, they approve a block with 100 transactions. If a block has 1,000 transactions, they approve a block of 1,000 transactions. And because they can be convened immediately, and because the agreement they can reach is extremely fast, they are not of a limitation. They're not of a bottleneck. Yeah,
so
and yeah.
Along the same line, if you go back to that slide with the phase 2, you said it's 1,000 and randomized.
Oh, yes.
No, the block before this.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was,
These are randomly selected among all users.
yeah.
Now the slide that you had with the magic,
Yeah.
you said there's a lottery. If these are randomly selected, there's no lottery. What was the metaphor that you're trying to go for?
Oh, no. So I'm going to say, I claim that there are 2 experiments, right? So we are not a billion here, right? But it's a very popular event, so great, thank you for organizing again. So, but I'm going to say, assume we are here 100, and I want to select, 10 of us, right? In experiment 1, an angel comes in and somehow selects at random 10 out of 1,000. The angel can do it. In the experiment number 2, I'm going to say, you run your own lottery, but yet to prove to me that you won, and we write a lottery probability 1 in 10, we are 100. If each one of us can win 1 in 10, I expect 10 winners. Of course, there can be fluctuations. The angel will always choose 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. When I ask people to run their own individual lottery, sometimes you're going to have 900 winners, and sometimes you can have 1,200, but doesn't matter. You're going to fluctuate a little bit around this, right? It's really the same. There is no difference between me as an individual and everybody as an individual running his or her own lottery and an angel choosing 1,000 among everybody. It's really, really the same.
Which one are you proposing?
Oh, the angel? I don't have an angel. I have a lot of luck in my life, but I don't have the luck to have an angel at my disposal. And even if I had, would you trust my angel? No. So somehow the 2 experiments mathematically are equivalent, but implementation-wise are very, very different, right? So I find a way to make sure that you select yourself with the right probability, and which I do have this way. I do not have a way for collectively selecting, because who is going to toss the coins to select 1,000 among all of us?
I'm going to have to cut off questions. I didn't want to cut off Silvio,
it's okay.
but
No.
I'm happy to cut off you. The program keeps moving.
In any case, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm being